and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Join my show.
Hello, I'm Simon Pusey in the GB newsroom. Police investigating the murder of Olivia Pratt-Corbell have warned that anyone withholding information is protecting killers. The 9-year-old was shot by a gunman on Monday when he chased his intended target into her home in Liverpool. 2 men who were arrested on suspicion of murder have been released on bail, with one of them being recalled to prison for breaching the terms of his licence. Merseyside police are urging anyone with any information to come forward, saying silence is not an option.
We've got a 9-year-old girl who won't celebrate her 18th birthday. She won't celebrate her wedding. She won't have children of her own. If you've got information and you're withholding it, you're protecting the killers. We need your information.
A huge package of financial support has been promised by the government to help struggling households through the energy crisis. The Prime Minister has written an article in the Daily Mail where he acknowledged bills are going to be eye-watering and the next few months are going to be tough. He said colossal sums of taxpayers' money is already being used to help people, and his successor will announce more support next month. West Yorkshire police say they have launched an investigation after a suspected drug-related death of a 16-year-old boy at the Leeds Festival. The teenager was taken to the medical tent after falling ill and was then taken to hospital before being pronounced dead. While the exact cause of his death is yet to be established, one line of inquiry is that he had taken ecstasy. More than 25,000 migrants have now crossed the Channel so far this year. That's after 915 people were intercepted yesterday, the Ministry of Defence saying they were on board 19 small boats. Monday saw the highest daily total on record, with 1,295 people making the treacherous journey across from France. And NASA's new space program is on course to launch its first mission to the moon. Conditions are expected to be favourable tomorrow, with the unmanned Artemis 1 due to lift off just after 1:30 UK time. If all goes well, astronauts will be back on the moon for the first time in over 50 years. The ultimate goal is to create a base camp. NASA Test Director Jeff Spaulding says so far everything's going to plan.
Bottom line is we look really good, no issues, no concerns or constraints from the lightning events at this point. We've done the battery charging on both Orion and the core stage. Those are complete. So that's all going really well and all as planned and on schedule.
TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to headlines.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Andrew Doyle. Joining me tonight are Headliners veteran Sajila Kershi and returning for a second show, Roger Monkhouse. So let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages. We're going to start with the Daily Mail. Daily Mail leads with hospitals hit by £5.5 million a day bed blocking crisis. So this is apparently 1 in 7 patients still on the wards are apparently fit for discharge. We're going to go to the Telegraph now, and they leave with PM, don't give up on green energy. Johnson is insisting that the UK can still pursue net zero while taking the sting out of heating bills. On to the Independent now. They lead with billions set to be cut from foreign aid projects. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment, and an image there of the Notting Hill Carnival, which is back up and running after a 3-year hiatus. On to The Guardian now, and they run with revealed Black and Asian cancer patients wait longer for diagnoses. On to the Financial Times now. They say policymakers warn of challenges in tackling new era of inflation. And the front cover of the Times. Half of Tory voters want energy to be nationalised. This is something that Gordon Brown had mooted a couple of weeks ago, and we all took the mickey out of him. But it looks like lots of people and lots of Tories want that as well. On to the Daily Express now, and they're running with millions facing hardship with end of cash in 5 years. And finally, the Star completely bucks the trend as usual. They go with few. This really stinks. And this is apparently the head of Britain's Environment Agency saying that we should drink recycled toilet water to avoid water shortages. I don't think that's going to catch on, to be honest. Anyway, those are your front covers. And kicking us off is Monday's Independent, and this is a story about money, but not the cost of energy or cost of living, Sajid.
No, this is about basically the government have been told to rethink their decision to count costs of Ukraine refugees within a shrunken budget to avoid unimaginable consequences. And what's happened is that billions have been slashed from overseas aid projects, which obviously we do give a lot of. I don't know if people are aware, but we do every year. But because they're spending so much. This is Save the Children, by the way, who have shown these concerns.
Yes.
Alarms being raised because there's a controversial decision basically to include spending on 118,000 Ukrainian refugees that are going to come to Britain. So that's all going to be like the costs that they're going to incur. And there is a breakdown of what it's going to cost us, I think, somewhere in the article. So basically, costs for these refugees to come over, so this will Save the Children are saying, it's payment to local authorities, 1.5 billion, accommodation, 400 million, cash support, 375 million. I mean, health costs, 500 billion. So this is a lot of money, but it's actually coming out from the aid that we would have given to other countries.
Yeah, so the
really
budget for world aid courses. I mean, the problem is the money's not unlimited, is it, Roger?
No.
So we sort of, it has to come from somewhere. And when you're in the midst of a crisis such as the Ukrainian crisis, you have to siphon that money out from other causes.
It's not unlimited, that's absolutely right, but it does rather whiff of shabby accounting, doesn't it? That's the truth of the matter. And it illustrates, I think, the absurdity, the stupidity or the pointlessness of setting these targets in the first place, because actually you can play fast and loose with the figures and shift pots of money around, just as has happened here.
Yes.
And make yourself look a little bit better and make it appear as if you've fulfilled the commitments that you've made without actually doing so.
Well, I mean, they're also suggesting here in this article that Liz Truss, when she becomes Prime Minister, as I think we all know she will, she's not going to be able to fulfil most of the commitments that she's made in terms of international aid, because of the planned tax cuts that she's implementing.
I think we need some really good accountants. Like comedians always looking for a decent accountant.
Yeah.
I think that's what the
Mine's
government...
pretty good.
Huh? Is yours good? Well, recommend him to the government. Yeah.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
It's rather a shame, though, isn't it, that so much of modern government seems to be about clever accounting
Well, it is,
rather
really.
than mission or commitment or purpose.
Once you get, but yeah, exactly. I mean, the Chancellor is one of the most important roles, isn't it? So
Sure.
I think that's right. Anyway, let's move on to a second story now. This is Monday's Times, and this is Liz Truss mulling over her nuclear option on tax. What's this about, Roger?
This is about Liz Truss, who is surrounded at the moment, as I understand it, in her Grace and Favour mansion by aides, planning her first few hours, first few days.
Right, aides or sycophants?
In government.
Courtiers.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
I think we all know what the putative cabinet's going to be.
Yes.
That's fairly well trailed.
And I don't think Rishi Sunak's going to be there.
I think it's fairly clear that Rishi's not going to be there. Even if he's nominally offered a gig, then clearly he's going to turn that down.
So this is about Liz Truss's solutions to the cost of...
She's already pledged massive tax cuts, of course, and now she's under increasing pressure to bring out a further package to tackle the energy crisis, the cost of living crisis.
Yes.
And this is when we find out how it's going to happen. This is when we find out what sort of unhinged psychopath is prepared to take on a job like this at this time in history.
I mean, this is an impossible situation because, inflation is through the roof, and then what's happened is people are being dragged into higher tax brackets. And
Yes.
this is obviously something that she's hoping address. But
that's something that they will be addressing. Apparently, once again, that's been trailed. They're going to shuffle up the tax bracket, the limits, the thresholds,
yes,
so that people are less trapped by that as inflation really kicks in.
Yeah, and when they're calling it fiscal drag, and that just sounds like something off RuPaul's show, doesn't it? I don't think that's what they mean. So, Gina, what can either Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak really do? I mean, with all their proposals.
Do you know, I'm not good with my own figures, so how am I supposed to work this out? But I think it's quite good because they're thinking of because the cap at the moment is 12,500. Yeah. For and that if they lifted that like to 15, whatever, I don't know what they would do, that might help. And of course, anyone earning it's 40% tax if you earn around 50,000.
That's right. Yeah.
So if they bought those figures, I don't know if that helps in real terms because.
It would help some people, of course. It wouldn't necessarily help everyone.
No.
Some people would fall through that net. It's a fairly blunt tool. She's specifically said that she will not give handouts, hasn't she? That's been her statement up front. So she's not into giving packages, but obviously fiddling with the tax arrangements would help. None of this is essentially costed, though, is it? There's no consequences. Rishi Sunak's talked about this, in fairness. He's talked about the trade-offs that are necessary in government. And bless her, Liz hasn't, as far as I'm aware, talked about those consequences at all. I mean, she's not talked about the cuts, which will inevitably be necessary.
So, so much of it is speculative, isn't it, when it comes to this stuff? And she has, she's going to be seizing the mantle at the worst possible time.
Oh, she's going to get the blame for everything. It is going to be a thankless job. And actually, I think Rishi would have been better because he's better with the finances. Well, a little bit better, I think. But do you know? It's like Do you want cystitis or thrush? I don't know. They're both bad.
You just compare Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak.
Apparently. Cystitis or
thrush.
I think that was it, yeah. I think that was it.
Goodness me. Well, this is a related story now. This is in Monday's Guardian. This is obviously Rishi has hit back at Truss about her VAT plans. Now, one thing I want to ask about this, Sajid, he's been very harsh in his criticism, isn't he, of Liz Truss?
Have they not been harsh with each other? But yeah, I guess he's been harsher. He's been harsher because he wants the job more, I think, and he knows he's got a fight in his hand because it was never really a fair game. I think it was always going to be Liz. Let's face it. I think anyone who thinks otherwise is.
Yeah, but he was the front runner to begin with.
Well, he wasn't the front runner with the membership, though, was he? He was the front runner with the MPs, but actually, of course. The membership believed that he was the one that wielded the knife and got rid of Boris.
Well,
he was never going to get it.
So this article really is about his criticism.
Yeah, I mean, thank God it is the final week of the X Factor final.
Yeah.
The beauty contest is nearly over.
Yeah, and they're touring the country. But yeah, this is basically Truss plans to slash VAT. They're considered regressive and flawed, says Sunak's team. And basically, Liz Truss's plans is to tackle the cost of living. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, just correct me if I'm wrong, but did Rishi Sunak not originally propose a VAT revision, and now he's apparently put it about that's regressive? That seems a bizarre.
He's thrown all kinds of epithets out, and it's actually been. This isn't actually the worst that he said. I mean, I think earlier in the week he was effectively suggesting that she would be presiding over a complete economic disaster if she implemented her ideas.
Yeah, and a holiday from reality, I think that was another phrase that was bandied about.
But the problem with this stuff is, and I don't know what you both think about this, but it's always going to be a bit ugly when you have these leadership contests. And it doesn't matter whether it's over here or in America. Do you remember when Joe Biden, I believe that Kamala Harris had accused Joe Biden of all sorts of things, of supporting racism and things like that. And then she ended up having to work with him. Now, we know that Rishi Sunak isn't going to end up working with Liz Truss. He's already made it clear he's not going to be in the cabinet. But what does this do to the party? When you have the two frontrunners basically cutting into each other, when we know that she's going to be
bad optics.
Well, also she's going to be the leader, isn't she?
Yeah, but she is. But the damage is. I don't think this has helped the Tory party at all.
No.
This long hustings. Yeah.
Whatever you fancy calling it.
What a nonsense. Yeah.
But
wasted.
That's very hard to tell, though. Sometimes it does help, and it's a cleft stick, isn't it? Because, of course, all the things that Rishi Sunak says, all the blue-on-blue attacks will be re-quoted by the opposition in a forthcoming...
They will.
Yeah.
Of course
exactly.
they will. But at the same time, all the media coverage is of the Tory party, and they are the only gig in town.
No, that is true. But we did see the Labour Party actually editing together the various candidates, back when there were 5 candidates still in the race, and they were editing together all the things that they'd said about how terrible the other candidates had done in the current government, and basically saying, look, even the Tories don't believe in the Tories. So, I mean, wouldn't it be sensible, thinking about Rishi Sunak, he knows he's lost, he knows Truss is going to win. For the good of the party, shouldn't he just, A, fall on his sword, but also stop slagging off who's going to be the next leader. Doesn't that make sense?
For the Tory party, yes, you would have thought so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And if Labour were sensible, they might sort of like try and get like Rishi on their side with their team, and maybe.
Wow,
like,
that would be a coup.
Yeah.
Unless he considers himself to be the leader but one, of course, and doesn't retire from the Commons and still hangs about, and then potentially picks up the pieces. Who knows?
Right, well, we shall see. Monday's Metro now with energy on everyone's minds. Does look like Ofgem now is facing some opposition, Roger. This is the regulator.
Is Ofgem the regulator? Oh, yeah. Well, this is a bit... Is this a vexatious piece of litigation? I'm not entirely sure. Seems unlikely, doesn't it? Ofgem are to be sued over the 80% hike to energy price cap. A pressure group said it plans to sue Ofgem over its 80% price cap rise, which it says will devastate families this winter. Ofgem raised the energy price cap on Friday, upping the average household spend to £3,549 a year. It seems to me that this is a strictly legal question of what the terms are that the regulator operates under.
Well,
and I don't honestly know the answer to that question.
I don't know if you can sue the regulator. Well, I mean, they're clearly intending to do so, but isn't this just the latest in an example of activists who are essentially attempting to use the courts to put pressure on the government? We've had it before.
Yeah, and perhaps the courts will throw it out, but it begs the question, doesn't it, of how valuable Ofgem or any of these regulators tend to be?
Well, I understand.
Actually, they tend to be rather toothless.
I understand the argument here. I mean, so this is the Good Law Project. This is Jolyon Morm, who's the lawyer, but he's predominantly known as a Twitter activist because he's very extreme online in the things that he says. And he's, now with this idea of suing the government, I suppose his argument is, people are going to die as a result of this. Elderly people are put at risk. I
must admit, the moment Ofgem to be sued at 80% hike to energy price cap, and I was like, good, because I was thinking something's got to be done, and I want something done, and I don't know what it is, but if you're going to be suing, if that helps...
Yeah, but that's the emotive response, isn't it?
Yeah,
but
that's an emotive response. But then when you say, like, they need to carry out an impact assessment that includes assessing the disproportionate impact on the elderly, children and people with disabilities, that's just common... kind of, that's the thing. And I'm really concerned about the most vulnerable in our society. They are, of course, always, I know we've got another story for, the elderly in a minute, but they are the ones that are most affected by this. And we're not minding what's happening.
Is litigation the answer, though?
Well,
really, it's a matter of whether they fulfilled the terms of their contract.
Well, but also, if we go down this road of we're effectively suing either regulators or the government even, I mean, look, every policy decision has a knock-on effect that could cost lives. This is in terms of how much you fund the NHS or anything, pensions, anything can have that kind of ramification. Is this really a precedent that we want to set? I'm not so sure, but...
I don't know. I just want something done.
You just want something done. Yeah. No, fair enough. OK, we're going to move on now to the Daily Mail, sticking with all the bad economic news. So pensions are being swallowed up because of the energy bill.
OK, so price caps... but basically, state pensioners... this is in the Mail, so make of it what you will. The state pensioners state pensioner receivers could spend 3/4 of income on energy bills. So... like I just said, pensioners, the most vulnerable, facing a terrible winter this year with, energy prices rising. The price cap for energy bills will rise by 80% by $3,549 by October, rising to $6,000 next year. I mean, that's just,
but they're bringing back the triple lock, and they're
bringing back the triple lock, which...
It never went away, did it? I mean, I think every leadership candidate, as far as I know, has always promised to maintain the triple lock. Not very long ago, we were talking about abandoning the triple lock because, in actual fact, societally, pensioners are often very, very well off. And the triple lock was seen as a way of redistributing money from the working age population to the retirees. However, if you depend exclusively upon your state pension, then you're shafted by
the government. Because the full state pension is only £185.15 every week, and the basic state pension is £141.85. So their government launch, like the £300 payment, that's going to go nowhere helping those...
That's not all pensioners, though, and I don't know what the percentages are, but that's critical, isn't it? Because a very high percentage of pensioners have their own private income, they have their own private pensions. What percentage, and I really absolutely don't know the answer to this, are pensioners who depend exclusively upon the state pension? I don't know.
There is quite a few, actually, because when I phone people like from a charity that they constantly say they're on their only basic pension. So I think there's quite a...
The key question is, how do you target them? How do you help them
without
spewing money into the pockets of already affluent?
And certainly, the elderly are definitely going to suffer here. This is a pretty much disastrous situation. Anyway, we're going to move on to Monday's Independent. And Boris, remember him? So Boris Johnson might be planning the biggest comeback since Lazarus. Roger, so...
This is lovely. There's an Arthurian tinge or tone to this, isn't there? Ex-Tory cabinet ministers say Boris Johnson is already plotting his comeback. He will emerge from the waters of petty scandal holding Excalibur aloft. The PM, brought down by scandal, believes the Tory party will turn back to him in desperation. It is a plausible situation, is it? You can imagine Liz Truss falling foul of the electorate and potentially being out of office in months,
But
years.
never go back, surely. I mean, I know he models himself on Churchill, and Churchill did have a second term, but, you know, this feels a bit like...
No, you never go back
Churchill
to an
never lost for leadership.
No, you don't.
No, exactly. This is the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't go back to a relationship, you don't go back to an old job. But also, bringing him back is as inappropriate as bringing back Gary Glitter's Good to Be Back in the charts. You know, but that said, maybe the devil you know, I don't know. But I just think, I don't think for him, you should ever go back.
But I'm surprised that he wants to, because I got the impression that he'd completely checked out now. And
but he did say hasta la vista, didn't he, at the...
Absolutely.
And he does. I mean, look, everyone who knows him knows he likes the power and he enjoys being in Prime Minister. He has enjoyed the job.
And he is and always has been a politician who makes his own rules and sets precedents.
That's true.
And this is a really interesting part of this story as well. One Opium survey found that 63% of Tory party members prefer the departing Prime Minister over Liz Truss, the likely winner of the Tory leadership race, who is backed by just 22%.
Yes, they're calling this
Wow.
seller's remorse.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they're worried. I mean, this article notes specifically they're worried about the conference, at the October Party conference.
Yes.
Because if Johnson turns up and everyone gives him this massive welcome, because let's face it, there is a kind of lukewarm response to comparatively speaking, to Liz Truss. So, I mean, this could be utterly disastrous. But are we really going to have a situation where Donald Trump is in the White House again?
I know.
And then Boris Johnson comes back. History goes in cycles, doesn't it?
Well, that's the whole thing. But that's the one thing we learn about history. It repeats itself, right?
Well, OK, well, we shall see. Anyway, look, that is the end of part one. Coming up, the culture war in government continues, the student loan amnesty happening in the States, and how soft on prisoners have our jails gone. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GBNews.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle, and still with me, going through tomorrow's news, are comedians Sewage Kershi and Roger Monkhouse. So, Monday's Express and more evidence of a north-south divide, this time with electric vehicles.
I know, who thought that would be the dividing thing? So electric vehicles, or EVs for short, they're basically, there is a disparity between the north and the south. I've got family like on the sort of north side who struggled with trying to find a place to kind of, put their charger in.
Yes.
With a car. And a leading car insurance company called quotezone.co.uk polled 500 car insurance policyholders to gauge their feelings on the cars, and the survey, which spoke to both fossil use fuel and also EV drivers, found that 59% of petrol or diesel car drivers would consider buying an EV when they absolutely have to. So it's not a priority, which means that they're net zero.
If the infrastructure's not there, if you can't charge the things, they're pretty useless.
Yeah, they are pretty useless.
That's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of course.
But it's actually a reality, because like people I know have struggled with trying to get I've got a friend in Surrey. She can go around locally, but she's too scared to go any further.
I've heard nightmarish stories.
Yeah.
People
you've
trying
got one?
to. No.
Oh.
Good heavens, no. I wouldn't dream of doing so, precisely for these reasons,
Yeah.
because the infrastructure simply isn't there.
Well, then why don't they do something about it? I mean, if they're going to say that petrol and diesel cars are banned by 2030, whatever it is they're suggesting, how are they going to hit net zero if they don't? They're relying on EV.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
it's money again, isn't it, really? I mean, the cost of investing in the infrastructure would be enormous. I don't know how these things work, to be honest with you. The north-south divide angle in this, I don't quite understand.
No, I don't
Isn't that
either.
just about
Well,
the purchase of new vehicles?
Well, I
Because
mean,
most new vehicles are bought in the south, and most new vehicles
there is
are
an issue with
EVs.
infrastructure in the north, and that's been an issue across the board.
Because
I think.
of course they haven't got as many, docking places. Like London's obviously got the most, 9.4%. I think that's a. Yeah,
No, that's right. It is mostly in the south.
It is London, and then North East has got fewer, and then it kind of goes on. And I think Wales has got double. The other way around.
Yeah, but the whole point is that they've been talking about levelling up and this idea of empowering the regions and improving infrastructure in the various regions. But have they really actually achieved much?
Well, they haven't with public transport similarly.
No.
Because you get much more of a return in London. You put a few billion into an infrastructure project in London, such as the Elizabeth line, and you get an economic return immediately.
Yes.
You'd have to throw a lot more money infrastructure in the north to get the same economic return.
Well, they're going to have to put their money where their mouth is, aren't they? If they're serious about this net zero
They're
target.
remotely serious.
But they want to ban sales of new petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Good luck with that, because that's not going to happen.
It probably isn't.
Yeah.
Sewage has spoken. Monday's Mail now, and as the culture wars continue, the Conservatives want to strike a blow to end them, apparently. What's this about?
Well, this is 20 Tory MPs who are calling for the abolition of England's main arts body over claims that it is using taxpayers' cash to wage an American-style culture war. The culture war works really well for the Tories, doesn't it, in fairness? And of course it's understandable that they should push this. But there's a serious point here. I think the Arts Council do, and we all know this, it's not a remarkable thing, they have strings attached to their grants,
Yes, everyone in the arts knows this.
Everyone knows that. The whole world knows it. And that is indeed, arguably, it's supposed to be an inclusive thing. It's supposed to promote inclusivity and peace and harmony, but of course it is divisive.
I'm not sure about that. I think the Arts Council is meant to promote the arts.
Well, there you go. It's a bit like the National Trust, isn't it? The National Trust is supposed to look after lovely old buildings. It's not necessarily supposed to be leading a mission to decolonise English history, and that's why people understandably find this contentious.
Yeah, but I don't know where that became, like decolonising history and stuff. But I do know that that inclusivity is not a bad thing. But I think it's gone too far. Like, I've benefited from the Arts Council. Like, I was commissioned to do something, Arts Council funding, and it was a project that I really wanted to do, to work within communities, with kind of, vulnerable women, and that was great, because it was a group of people that I would not have got the arts or had access.
Yes.
But now, we were introducing it to, so I think that's really important. But when it goes silly, where you just can't, because the arts should be available for everybody. Well, that doesn't say you take it away.
So some of the things you're describing there, things like outreach projects, art projects in prisons or in deprived communities and that sort of stuff. So that grants for that makes sense to me. It makes complete sense to me, because people don't get to see these sorts of things normally. But this particular story is talking about how the Arts Council is promoting a specific policy that's come from America, which is including this idea of unlearning whiteness, which is nonsense.
It's linking cash grants of over $400 million a year to an international campaign that backs unlearning whiteness, and that's important.
Well, that's coming straight from the language of critical race theory, the idea of whiteness, and that is a racially divisive policy. And should taxpayers' money be funding racial division?
This is the Daily Mail, so same me.
Well, exactly. I was going to say that, and the 20 Tory MPs have accused the Arts Council of backing this campaign that involves unlearning whiteness. But the Arts Council have responded, and this is perhaps an indication of what a made-up nonsense this story is.
Yeah.
The Arts Council have responded with, and I quote, "We have never used the term unlearn whiteness."
But isn't that a bit of a fudge? They haven't used the term, but the Arts Council is linking cash grants of over the £400 million a year to this campain that does use the term.
Yeah.
And I think that could be significant. I mean, it looks like people need to look into it a little bit more. But, I do worry about the arts in particular getting ideologically captured. We have to prioritise...
I think they already are. I think they have been for decades. And despite the fact that we had 12 years of Tory government, I mean, they still are and always have been, and are as much now as they ever have been.
I think the Tories have been just as bad as anyone else.
Well,
anyway.
they've either let it happen or it's continued apace under them. But undoubtedly, it's a football. Of course it is. It's a football, and this story is raised by, as I said, 20 Tory MPs through the Daily Mail, and it plays well for them.
Right, let's move on now. This is Monday's Mail still. The war on woke in the NHS continues.
Oh, yes, the war on woke. I mean,
it's a terrible phrase, isn't it? But what's going on in the NHS then?
OK, so the NHS there's been criticism because they are still, even though they were told not to, advertising jobs within well-paid jobs within with equality, diversity, inclusion roles, and they get paid a hell of a lot of money.
Obscene amounts of money, isn't it?
Yeah,
Big
head
salaries.
of quality, diversity, inclusion at St Helens Nosey Teaching Hospital NHS Trust are willing to pay $56,000 to $65,000. I can do that job.
But what does it involve? Really? Because I genuinely don't know. What does that job involve? Practically, day to day.
Treat everybody really well. Be nice to everyone. And just be equal. I mean, there is a part of it, though, Andrew. There is as much as we don't go too far, and my grandmother would just say everything in moderation. That's what's happening. We have not got that anymore. Everybody wants to go polarised in one area or another. Is that there should be some kind of I've seen in the hospitals myself, where they don't understand how to be around disability. They don't understand around to be different cultures.
Okay.
Someone's saying they can't eat pork, because they're Jewish, and it's like, I've taken the bacon off. No, that doesn't work.
But does that require these people who are paid so much money to monitor
that?
No,
because you just pay me half this,
and you can do it.
I can go and do it.
What happens, though, in any monolithic organisation, in any massive corporation, the NHS is a prime example, of course, is you get empire builders, you get the health and safety executive, and they get their budget, and then they have to justify that budget, and then that department
and they've got to spend it all.
Year on year, they do spend it all, then they take on staff, and the people who initiate it then become promoted, and they supervise others, and these cancers grow in any major organisation, and that's one of the reasons why the NHS is failing. It's because, of course, it's been around for many decades, and these cancers grow within it, just as they do within any major corporation.
But it's bizarre, isn't it? Because I can understand having a diversity officer in a company where you have a real problem with diversity. The NHS does not have a problem with diversity. The NHS is an incredibly diverse workforce already.
OK, so you're seeing it like it's not. There's no diversity, but I think it's about how to be around diversity, how to be around people, of colour, how to be around religions, how to be around. So I think it covers all those things.
Human beings can deal with that, but we deal with different types.
I know we were dealing with it before,
and pretty well.
But but
many of these positions are advertised, as this article points out.
For it.
Well, I think that's the problem. I mean, it's a big industry, isn't it? The diversity industry, and the thing is, here they've been told. The point is they've been told to stop by the health secretary. But they're still advertising it. So we get this again and again, like when the College of Policing were instructed by the Home Office to stop recording non-crime hate incidents, and they just carried on anyway. Because once you were talking about these sort of cancers, but once you have an ideological thing at the heart of any body, they're not going to ignore they're going to ignore the top-down instructions. Because they think their ideology is more important than...
And it's an insight into how gloriously ineffective government is as well.
Clearly. OK, let's move on now. This is Monday's Times, and if it was that easy to forgive debt, Why didn't the president do this years ago, Roger?
Well, this is Joe Biden who is bidding for increased popularity. His approval rating has improved massively recently, interestingly. So
yes,
perhaps he's turning it around somehow.
Is that because people are scared of Trump coming back?
That's entirely possible, yes. But he has apparently, what's it called? A loan forgiveness system, whereby, basically, just as in this country, graduates who aren't actually earning that much have a proportion of their student debt forgiven.
Yes, it's going to wipe off $10,000 for certain recipients of student debt. I mean, in America, the student debt is pretty it's mad.
It's massive here, but it's even worse in America.
Much worse in America. They come out with incredible...
It's horrendous. I mean, the same problem pertains throughout the Western world, as far as I'm aware. We've reached a point where there is an obligation to take on a loan, and then it doesn't pay for itself, you know? It doesn't justify itself in increased work opportunities, increased living standards.
Do you think, is Biden just trying to buy off young voters here?
Of course,
because, I mean, it's clearly targeted.
Low-hanging fruit for the young, and saying, look, you know, I'm going to... And, of course, that's going to appeal to the younger voter.
And once again, taking on massive government debt, more massive government debt. I mean, they've printed, under Trump as well, they've printed so many dollars. It's just extraordinary. The money supply here and in America and throughout Europe has just been massively increased by governments printing money and taking on huge amounts of debt.
But I don't think the leaders care. This is the thing. I don't think governments are caring.
Because of the electoral cycle.
Yeah, because also...
Short-termism.
It's such a career... thing. We can see it with the two contenders here now. It's such a career... You're willing to say anything.
To get back into power.
I'll push the button, I'll do whatever to get the power, to get the job. And so, people are no longer important.
Well, it can
if the
backfire,
leadership
though.
election had gone on longer, then potentially they'd have promised to abolish all taxation, because it was a race to the bottom entirely along those lines.
Well, but when Jeremy Corbyn said that he was going to do a similar thing, I mean, in his manifesto, he was offering the young all sorts of free gifts, and frankly, people could see through it, and they realised that, the resources don't exist. So, we'll see how this goes for Biden. Anyway, we're going to stick with the Times now and prison. So, look, this is an interesting one about, are French prisons too soft, Sajila?
Right, so this is in the Times. Go-karting was part of a charity event featuring inmates, guards and locals that also included a tug-of-war and a quiz. So French prisons that are known actually to be overcrowded, rat-infested and violent, because this is the European Court of Human Rights has found this.
Yes.
Yet, and in fact, they thought that it was cruel and degrading. Yet last week, the country was wondering if the prison authorities had gone soft, because inmates of one prison called Freesat, in one of France's biggest jails, just south of Paris, they were seen go-karting, jumping into a pool, which looked like scenes from a holiday camp. Sounds a bit like a scene from Wolf of Wall Street, debauched criminals, but
are they not allowed any kind
prison.
of, leisure time? I mean, is this not something that we should...
OK, fair enough. I think prison should mean that you suffer, but I also think that, human rights it's important to human rights kind of...
is go-karting a human right?
Go-karting is not a human right. I think this has gone too far. It's ridiculous. I mean, they said I didn't mind, but one of them was a rapist who was going around in a go-kart, and they were most offended by that. And it's like, so no go-karting for the rapist or for the murderers, but the rest of them are OK.
OK, interesting. Roger, can you talk me through? I mean, look, is prison for rehabilitation or is it for retribution? Because can it be the case that they should have an absolutely horrible time? Isn't the loss of freedom the punishment?
Absolutely, the loss of freedom is absolutely the punishment, and it's for rehabilitation. I apologise for sounding like a big liberal on this, but I probably am. But of course, the tabloid mentality is the opposite of that. That it's about retribution. It's about revenge, and that rapists particularly shouldn't be allowed to have a go on the go-kart.
Well, this is the Times. This isn't even tabloid.
Unless they have been castrated and are still raw, and then they can use the go-kart.
Well, I'd always imagine French prisons to be rather civilised affairs.
Yes, I think so. I think so, Sajila. I don't think you're seriously calling for...
No, I'm not. But I'm just thinking cost of living. I might get myself into the prison cell block H women's prison version in France.
Yes.
Because at least I'll get fed and I'll get...
And you'll get go-karting.
Yeah, I'll get go-karting.
You've said it already, the loss of liberty is punishment enough. I can imagine nothing more horrendous than being incarcerated under any circumstances, however humane the regime.
Lockdown.
I don't begrudge them.
Lockdown was
That was great. That was in my home.
No, I really don't begrudge them with the odd go-karting, but they have to do something, don't they? Anyway, Coming up in part 3, Pride turns on lesbians, the return of Concord, and the miracle of drinkable sewage. See you in a moment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Andrew Doyle, and going through the slightly odder stories now in this third section. I've got with me Sejila Kershi and Roger Monkhouse. So Monday's Mail and the LGBT movement. This is the Gay Pride Parade in Cardiff, which has just seen a number of lesbians kicked out. Now, Roger, I actually spoke to one of the lesbians who was kicked out of this parade on my show earlier today. What do you make? Do you want to just explain what's happened here first?
Well, of course I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. The police were compelled, or felt obliged, to remove lesbians from the Gay Pride Parade in Cardiff because they were causing aggro because of their gender-critical stance.
Right.
It's a specific group of lesbians. And they were told, whatever you are, you're causing confrontation with trans groups and their supporters. And it's not surprising, really, that lesbian communities, which are part of the real world, have strong feelings about this.
Yeah.
I've always been slightly baffled why lesbians apparently are assumed to be in league with the transgender lobby, because for all sorts of reasons I can imagine that they might not be.
So, well, they had various banners, and the lesbians were protesting. Well, one of the banners said lesbians don't like penises, and there has been a lot of coercion and pressure on lesbians to include biological males who identify as female in their dating pool. I mean, even if you go on sort of those lesbian-only dating apps, there's now a lot of men who identify as women in those apps.
Yeah.
And lesbians are increasingly feeling under attack.
I would feel very uncomfortable about that. If you just imagine yourself in the position of a lesbian using one of those apps, I'd feel very, very uncomfortable about that person.
It's very interesting, Sejila, because earlier, I spoke to one of the women who was involved, and she was saying they weren't blocking they'd arranged that they would be able to walk in front of the march with them, because it's a protest. Pride is a protest, right?
The whole point is everyone's welcome.
Right. And then the police are saying, well, they were trying to block the parade, but it doesn't look like that was the case.
No.
And actually, and the aggro, if there was aggro, was coming from the activists screaming and shouting at them.
And yet they weren't stopped. And I find that really odd. That they, well, I don't care who you are, but you're right now, you're causing the aggro. No, are they? Are they really? Is it that you're too scared to actually confront the activists? And this is the problem we've got. It's like, kind of bowing down to them. And they've got the whole movement, because I saw it trending on Twitter, like remove the L.
Get the L out.
Get the L out. And I was thinking, well, that leaves it with GBT.
Well, they're specifically saying that lesbians have specific problems insofar as they face homophobia, but they also face sexism in society. And there is this kind of sense, and there can be sort of very dangerous repercussions. If you've got a domestic violence refuge centre, a single-sex space, and you're starting to prioritise gender identity, how someone sees themselves, over the biological reality of male and female, it matters for people in vulnerable positions.
It matters,
yes,
because there could be rape victims, there could be someone who's had domestic violence, and then to be faced with. And at the moment, unfortunately, what we have is you can self-identify. So you can today announce, exactly as you are, that I've decided I'm a woman.
And walk into any formally safe space.
And then how is that going to make someone who's vulnerable feeling, a woman-only space?
Absolutely,
because that's the problem I have with it. Not that, obviously trans should have rights. So, that's absolutely right.
But these women aren't saying that trans people shouldn't be able to live as they like to live.
No.
I mean, I actually asked that question specifically earlier from Angela Wilde, who was one of the lesbian protesters there, and she was saying, no, they can, but we shouldn't have to be forced to agree with their ideological perspective.
And that's their right.
And also within gay pride has a big history of a protest and raising awareness of your issue. And this idea that lesbians get kicked out of a gay pride parade for expressing their lesbianism, for saying lesbians don't like penises, and they're called transphobes and they're called hateful bigots for simply asserting their same-sex attraction. That seems, well, frankly, it seems a bit homophobic to me.
It is
and isn't it weird, gay pride becoming a forum for homophobia, enforced by the police?
That's right. This is the terrifying thing. Of course, the police didn't have the confidence or didn't have the clear-sightedness to police the situation in a rational, sane
That's because
way.
they hadn't had their diversity training.
Oh, I see. And that's where you come in again.
I will do that for you, police people, for £60,000 a year.
Right, well, let's move on now to Monday's Daily Star. And this is, so this is a young transgender model, 10 years old, Sajeela.
This story made me so angry. OK, so it's the Daily Star, so make of it what you will.
I don't think they're lying, though. I think this is a true story.
I think it's true. So the world's youngest transgender model, 10 years old, could make a million or two in the next year. So this is an American model and ultimate woke role model, they've called her.
OK.
Called Noella McCamere. Now she's 10 years old. She's apparently first identified as a transgender as a toddler.
As 2.5?
Yes, before going on to become a rising star of the fashion world. And then apparently she decided that she, I think at 2.5, and then at 8, she transitioned... No, sorry, she socially transitioned at 4, and her birth certificate changed from male to female aged 10.
Can I ask you this?
This is stage parents, right? Stage mum, dad, who basically want to make money out of their
kids. They're making a lot.
And they're making a lot. And then you read further on and you realise that both Noella's parents identify as non-binary. Noella's biological mum identifies as a trans masculine male.
Right, so this is very interesting, because when Blair White, who is an American YouTuber, trans writer and YouTuber, and Blair White, she said, having a transgender child is like having a vegan dog. You know who's making the decisions there,
absolutely.
And it is, it's absolutely not. It isn't. I don't believe there can be a transgender 2.5-year-old. I'm going to say that.
No, absolutely not.
Did you think
children are hardwired to please the supervising adult, whether that's a parent or a carer or a teacher. They are hardwired to say what they believe you want them to say. So if you say, are you having difficulty with your mental health? They'll say, yes, I'm having difficulty with my mental health. If you say, are you struggling to identify yourself in your gender? They'll say, yes, I'm struggling to identify my gender. That's what children do.
I mean, I thought, there was that drag kid who a few years ago was very, very popular. And he was called Desmond is Amazing, and it's sort of dancing in bars for tips in a provocative way from the age of 10, 11.
Oh, because he learned that all by himself, didn't he?
I mean, I just think a lot of the time these are just gender non-conforming kids, and I always get nervous anyway about these stage parents, because there's always an element of exploitation.
I know, there is exploitation, but also the people that are involved that are colluding with this. So Paris Fashion Week have put a 10-year-old... Let's take out the gender, transgender stuff.
Yeah, forget that for a moment.
10-year-old child, you're going to put on the modelling on the Paris Fashion Week.
Yeah.
Shame on you, all the people that are working around to try and,
At what point does it become abuse? At what point do you intervene?
That is what it is.
Yeah, OK, well, listen, we're going to move on now to Monday's Mail. And, of course, once Jesus turned water into wine. But now water companies, they want to turn sewage into drinking water. Modern miracle, Roger.
Well, I thought this had always happened. I thought water companies always processed water, and it's always, is it not, recycled infinitely? So people have told me previously. But
I didn't realise that. I mean, I imagine there was some of that, but this is clearly a new policy that they're talking about, isn't it?
Well, it's a story that's out today, but I mean, I'm not entirely sure there's much substance to it.
OK.
Water companies are considering systems to turn sewage into drinking water to avert shortages. People will need to be less squeamish about where Britain's drinking water comes from, the Environment Agency chief said.
But you're saying it already happens?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Right.
Thames, yeah, I think so.
Well,
They're just telling us now. They're just telling. I don't need to. I didn't need to know this. Luckily, I only drink bottled water. I didn't know this.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I only drink bottled water.
Do you think, though...
Water's lovely.
Is this being said now because they're drawing attention to the fact that we've obviously had these things in the news recently? We've had this idea of sewage having to be pumped out because of the floods, you know. But look, and because there have been obviously the drought situation. But here's the point: why don't they just fix the pipes? You know, we've got water companies in this country. 1.1 trillion litres of water escapes through those pipes.
25% of the entire supply is basically leaked away.
Forget about recycling sewage. Fix your pipes.
Fix the pipe.
Build some reservoirs.
And
invest in the infrastructure.
But again,
rather than giving share dividends to your shareholders, and increasing leverage as well. I think I'm right in saying that water
nationalise
companies...
the water.
Well, that seems to be in the air, doesn't it, at the moment? I mean, for all sorts of reasons, that seems to be...
Sajida.
Don't you think, Roger, though, that the point is that every time anything like this happens, they blame the public. So they're saying we need to treat water as a precious resource, not a free good.
Yeah.
No, water should be the one thing that should be free. It's like, that is a human right, actually.
And it falls out of the sky. We live in a very wet country.
The
climate's getting wetter substantially.
So that's a good argument for nationalisation then, isn't it? If water is a human right, this is one thing that we shouldn't be monetising in this way. Anyway, look, we won't get into that. Let's move on now to Monday's Telegraph. And NASA is aiming to answer the famous question asked by David Bowie, is there life on Mars and beyond?
Well, now...
Did he ask that question? Apparently. So where are they going next? This is exciting.
So now we've done with colonising, each other's countries, we've decided to start on other planets in the galaxy.
It was a victimless crime. I mean, there are no Martians.
There are no Martians, but, just as well. So Space Agency wants a presence throughout the solar system once upcoming Moon and Red Planet missions are complete. So basically, they're doing this. They want to go to these different planets. They want to try and get someone to live on the Moon and then see what's beyond that.
Right.
It's like, you know what? I don't really care. I'm planet Earth person.
At the moment.
At the moment, right? It took me ages to kind of get accepted as a migrant to this country. So no, I'm not moving. I don't know who wants to move to these planets, but you can all go. I'm happy here.
Right, well, what about future generations? Like, our sun is halfway through its life. When it swallows the Earth, we're going to have to go elsewhere, aren't we? I mean, obviously, that's quite a way on.
Crikey, that's forward thinking.
Well, we'll be dead.
Well, I mean, look.
You and I will be dead. My son will be dead. So
you never know. Exercise, take vitamins.
Is this even practical? I'm in over my head here, but isn't Mars an awful long way away? I mean, the Moon's a spit away.
But this is quite exciting because we haven't had the Apollo missions for 50 years. We haven't been on to the Moon for all of this time, and they're talking about with this Artemis mission to settle on the Moon for the first. So we're going to have actually a base on the Moon, so we can learn from that and therefore apply those lessons when we go off to Mars and beyond. I think it's really exciting.
Hang on, can we just say that the planet is struggling right now? There's no money. They're going to use a lot of money for this. These trips aren't cheap. Spend it on planet Earth. Spend it on our people.
You could always say that, couldn't you?
Yes, always think of the technological advances.
Isn't there something quite aspirational as well? There's something wonderfully beautiful and poetic about going to the Moon, going to Mars.
This is probably Richard Branson behind this. Do you know what I mean?
I think this is a great idea.
He's going to be going.
I'm a big fan. I think it's terrible that they stopped funding NASA and that the Moon project stopped, because I think, when Kennedy made that big announcement saying by the end of the decade man will have walked on the Moon, it was aspirational, it was beautiful, everyone was going for it.
It's true, it energised the country in many ways,
but there's so much more to do, Sajida.
Yeah, we've done it. Like, I don't need anyone to be living on the Moon. I don't want to see the man on the Moon. Just stay on your own planet. Like, it's safer here. Just stay here.
Goodness me. OK, well, let's move on now to the next article. This one is from Monday's Mirror. Concorde could be making a comeback, but it's not quite Concorde, is it?
No, this is Son of Concorde, apparently.
Is that like the sequel?
Well,
I am your
turns out
father.
it's going to fly twice as fast as Concorde. This is a supersonic jet which supposedly reaches 1,300 miles per hour and will get you anywhere in the world in just 4 hours.
That's amazing.
The aircraft, called the Overture, has been dubbed the son of Concorde and can reach 1,300 miles. And these people live on another planet, because you and I aren't ever going to get a ride on this. I tell you, this is for the super elite.
It's going to be very expensive, is it?
Well, quite impossibly expensive. Blake Skoll, CEO of Boom Supersonic, claimed that the son of Concorde would confine jet lag to history, as travellers could beat any time difference. Listen to this. If a flight from San Francisco to Tokyo is cut from 12 hours to 6, you can leave a whole day later. If you leave Sunday morning, you'll get there Sunday afternoon, which is Monday morning, Japan time, do a day of meetings and arrive back home 24 hours after you left without any jet lag.
I mean, that's amazing. So it's like time travel. Look, do you know what? Because I feel back, like with Concorde, that came to an end. Obviously, that was that horrible accident that occurred, but that wasn't the reason it really shut down. It was becoming economically unviable. But isn't this a good step forward, Sajida, to bring...
No, 1,750 to go from London to New York.
And it only takes a few people.
I'd rather spend, like, go on a longer flight and have that spending money to go and spend when I go to New York.
Oh, why not do a Zoom call?
Can we afford these? I mean, I don't know.
Do you know what?
I could.
You two are so sort of Luddite about this. You don't want to go to the moon, you don't want to go to Mars, you don't want to fly fast around the world.
I wouldn't mind if he'd built in a day of tourism.
No.
You know, that would have made it so much more accessible.
Faster, but only if we can afford it. The ordinaries can afford it.
All right, OK. Well, anyway, speaking of planes, this is a bit of a disturbing story in the Sun. What's this? Pilots fighting.
First rule of Cockpit Fight Club, right, which is what happens. Two pilots start fighting in a cockpit after one refuses to follow orders as flight attendants move in to split them up.
So they have to get the air stewards in to break up a fight in the cockpit?
So basically, they're kicking off with each other. So two rowdy pilots have been suspended.
What's this, Air France?
It's Air France, and, you know, one of the attendants had to come in and just, like, act like a bouncer and leave it out. It's not worth it.
Unbelievable.
It's not worth it. And one hit the other one with their briefcase. Why is the briefcase in the cockpit?
That's what you're worried about. I'm worried about the two people who are meant to be flying the plane are slugging it out. I mean, this is a...
But it's not the first time. They've had 2018, the two Iraqi Airways pilots were also suspended after coming to blows over a food tray. The things people will argue about, maybe
this
maybe
is just
gets
terrifying.
A bit,
I mean, look, grossly unprofessional, Roger.
They're very passionate people, aren't they?
It's the French, is that what you're saying?
Well, actually...
We shouldn't excuse that, though, when you're colliding with a mountain.
I'm not even sure it's the French, actually, because the plane was on its way from Baghdad to Mashhad in Iran.
But it's Air France.
It was
pilots.
Air France, but I'm not necessarily assuming that the pilots were...
No, OK.
The staff
Well, they shouldn't be fighting whatever their nationality,
of course
right?
not. Of course not. You wouldn't feel so.
wrong either way.
Wrong either way. OK, look, let's move on now to Monday's Mail. UFO researchers claim there's something out there. Well, or maybe they're just justifying their jobs. Roger, what's this about?
This is just nutters, isn't it? People think, but sorry, I should put on some sort of accent for this. People think we wear tinfoil hats and bark at the moon. Britain's female UFO researchers are convinced alien life forms do exist, but say that they're judged for their work.
But these people are suggesting they're actually completely normal. They just have this enthusiasm. They believe, well, why couldn't there be people on other planets? I mean, the universe is a big old place.
Yeah. But when the ships come, you know, when the ships come, they never take people like this. We could do with them taking people like this.
Yeah.
I'm being really negative today.
Really negative. Isn't this a weird article? This article looks like it's just been written to try and, you know, improve the reputation of those who hunt UFOs. That's what it looks like to me.
Oh, I think the subtext is that it completely enforces the stereotype that we have of them already.
Oh, really?
Yes,
I actually feel for them a little. I mean, why not think outside the box a little bit?
I don't mind people having a hobby, you know, or an eccentric interest in things. I've no problem with that.
Well, I hope that...
Better than bird watching, I suppose.
It is, but it's more interesting, isn't it?
Well,
look, I hope there are aliens out there. Anyway, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for joining us for Headliners. Thanks to my guests, Roger and Sajila. And we'll be back tomorrow at 11 o'clock. See you there.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.